Well, there's a little bit of snow on the ground. The pumpkins are on the porches, and some of them are coming off, which means we've passed a little bit of time together this fall. And normally we go 8 weeks, but this semester we did 7 because I've got state conference, and then I'm traveling, and Thanksgiving, So this is the last class. It's the 7th class, which just occurs to me now for the first time. Maybe that's a little symbolic. We're talking about the 7th seal today, the 7th 1,000 years of the earth's temporal existence. And if you will, that comes from the 77th section of the Doctrine and Covenants that talks about the 7,000 years of the temporal existence of the earth. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the millennium. And frankly, we've talked about the philosophies of men in the last days. We've talked about the challenges, perilous times. We've talked about some of the signs of the times. We've talked about wayward children. We've talked about a lot of things this semester. I think ending this way is really nice because this is a very hopeful message, the message of rest and peace and the promise of the millennium. And a message that the Lord just infused throughout the Revelations in every dispensation. He's clearly wanted us to know of that perspective, that he was in charge and that there would come a day where once again the earth would rest and all the people thereon. So I look forward to that. Let's, when I speak about section 77, without turning to it, there's a question and answer between Joseph and some of the early brethren. And Joseph says that the earth will have 7,000 years of temporal existence. All right? Now, this is not a debate about the age of the earth, and we don't know the timing of the Lord and its creation. What we can say is that from the fall of Adam, from the time that the earth fell from its paradisiacal or Edenic state, a terrestrial state, from the time that fall occurred, you could start the clock, and without trying to be precise, there are 7,000 years of temporal existence, meaning temporary, meaning a state in which the earth is in a temporary condition. You and I are in that temporary condition. It means that we have bodies that are corruptible and corrosive and get old and die and this sort of thing. And you have, of course, in the book of Revelation, the 7 seals. And those 7 seals are indicative of 7 1,000-year periods. And most of the book of Revelation deals with things that will happen in the 7th seal, the millennial day. And so we have this expectation set that there are times and seasons to the progress of this earth that we're on. And you know that we are in the what we call the Saturday night of time. We're in the last part of the 6th seal. And so we begin to see things that are anticipatory and are climaxing and culminating in what will come, which is the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. Which second coming will begin the advent of the millennium. So we're going to today go through, I think about 4 key scriptural passages. There are many, but we can only do so much. And then we'll refer to a number of statements from the brethren over the years that describe the conditions of the millennium and the earth during that 7,000 years period. Now, I don't know if there will be much that's new to you today, but hopefully we just draw a picture and put things in context. I think a lot of the teaching on the millennium is well known to the Latter-day Saints. But let's begin with a quote here from Orson Pratt, who says, "What a happy earth this creation will be when this purifying process shall come, and the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the great deep." He's quoting Isaiah there. "What a change! Travel, then, from one end of the earth to another. You will find no wicked man, no drunken man, no man to blaspheme the name of the great Creator, no one to lay hold of his neighbor's goods and steal them, no one to commit whoredoms." So he speaks appropriately of the state of man during the millennium, and that there's peace and there's people are living up to a noble and a good law. Yeah, Max.
I was just going to mention that your grandpa thought Orson Pratt was the smartest.
Oh,
Other than Joe.
okay, I didn't know that. Max says that my grandfather believed that Orson Pratt was the smartest of the early brethren besides Joseph. Well, okay. He also had one of the best beards. It was really quite a beard Orson had. He was science-minded and theologically minded. Let's begin today's discussion in the Book of Mormon. Come with me to 3rd Nephi. And we'll do a little bit of a prelude to the millennium. And you'll see this in 3rd Nephi, chapter 21. Now, we won't spend a lot of time here, but this happens to be one of my favorite. These two chapters happen to be a few of my favorite in the entire Book of Mormon. This is, of course, the Lord among the Nephites. And interesting that you got to pay real careful attention what the Lord selects to teach to the Nephites. This is something that he feels very passionately about. And they're restoration and millennially focused. All right? Now, in chapter 21, you can see in the heading of the chapter, it says that Israel will be gathered when the Book of Mormon comes forth. Last week, we talked a little bit about how the Book of Mormon coming forth was one of the signs of the times, and that the gathering of Israel was one of the signs of the times. And this is certainly the message, once again, of this chapter. And it's a sign that you know that the covenant that the Father made to the ancients is beginning to be fulfilled, that their posterity would have, of course, the blessings of the covenant. And that happens here in America and across the world. And the Father, in verse 9, begins to work a marvelous work. And you know what that is, this marvelous work and a wonder, we refer to it as. And there would be those who don't believe it, although a man shall declare it unto them. Well, that man would be the prophet Joseph Smith. But behold, the life of that man, my servant, shall be in my hand. Therefore they shall not hurt him. Although he shall be marred because of them, yet will I heal him. So this is a prophetic statement saying that in the last days, the mouthpiece of the dispensation, Joseph Smith, would be persecuted. He would be physically marred, but also intellectually and reputationally marred. That is fulfilled today. It continues. But the life of this servant is in the hand of the Lord. Well, this passage goes on, and if you turn the page, you see here that there's going to be this thing called a new Jerusalem that's established. Let's read in verse 23. Speaking of the remnant of Jacob, really that means, who's the remnant of Jacob? Well, it's the church. In this context, verse 22, you'll see that the Lord says, I will establish my church among this Gentile nation from the remnant of Jacob, and they will have the privilege of establishing a new Jerusalem. Verse 23, and they shall assist my people, the remnant of Jacob, and also as many of the house of Israel as shall come, that they may build a city, which shall be called the New Jerusalem. And then shall they assist my people, and that they may be gathered in, who are scattered upon all the face of the land, in the New Jerusalem. And then shall the power of heaven come down among them, and I will be in the midst. All right? So you know that we're going to have this thing called a New Jerusalem established, and who's going to build it but the church? This New Jerusalem. And what do we know of this New Jerusalem? It'll be a place of shelter. It'll be a place of gathering. It'll be a place where there is a temple built. And we know that Christ will be there in the midst of this place. Look quickly, keep your thumb there, we'll come back to it, but look at Ether. Go to the 13th chapter of Ether. And we'll get a little bit more color on this New Jerusalem. Verse 8. Wherefore the remnant of the house of Joseph shall be built upon this land, and also the land, it shall be a land of their inheritance, and they shall build up a holy city unto the Lord, like unto the Jerusalem of old. And they shall no more be confounded until the end come, when the earth shall pass away. We're going to speak of that. And there shall be a new heaven and a new earth. Just park that concept in your mind. We're going to come back to it in section 29. There shall be a new heaven and a new earth, and they shall be like unto the old, save the old have passed away, and all things have become new. And then cometh the new Jerusalem. So the book of Ether puts the new Jerusalem in the new earth. Now, 3 Nephi 21, which we just read, puts New Jerusalem prior to the Lord coming. They're both correct. The foundations of New Jerusalem will begin prior to the Lord coming a second time, and then that city will remain and be in place, and really will be one of two world capitals during the millennial era, all right? Then cometh also the old Jerusalem, that's the other capital, and the inhabitants thereof, blessed are they, for they have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. So let's go back to where we were in 3 Nephi 21. So one thing that we see is that the New Jerusalem is both pre-millennial and millennial. And you would say the foundations of the New Jerusalem are laid by who? The remnant of Joseph, by the church. And so this New Jerusalem will be designed and governed and executed by the church. And it will be one of two world capitals during the millennium. All right? One of those is the New Jerusalem, and one of those is the Old Jerusalem. You can see this many places, but let's look. It's in Isaiah 2, but you can find it in 2 Nephi 12. And you'll be very familiar with this language. The day shall come to pass in the last days when the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the mountains. Well, that's happened. We're doing construction on that temple downtown right now. And shall be exalted above the hills. And many people shall go up and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God, Jacob. And he will teach us of his paths, and we will walk in his paths. And here you go. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. All right, so now we have a couple of synonyms here. That New Jerusalem, out of Zion shall go forth the law. And, I turned away. The word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Two world capitals. Perhaps Jackson County, Zion, is the civic government seat of the whole earth. And Jerusalem, Old Jerusalem, the church seat, if you will. But the fact is, they will be so integrated that maybe it doesn't even make sense to divide them as such. Remember when Joseph Smith actually laid the plans for the city of Zion in Jackson? And you remember that there were many temples. I'm shooting from the hip, I think 24 different buildings. They were civic buildings. They were government buildings. They were meeting houses for members. They were religious. They were temple. They were ritual, edifices. But it was a whole campus. So the idea in Joseph's mind early on was, hey, we're laying the foundation for a New Jerusalem that will govern, not just in the church, but will also govern, the affairs of the world. And so here we have this concept of a New Jerusalem. And the thing I wanted to show you here is, let's go back to 3 Nephi 21. After this language of the church, go to the early part of the chapter, after the Book of Mormon's come forth, after Joseph Smith has been marred, after the gathering has begun, after the land of the Gentiles begins to be, to embrace the restored gospel, then, chronologically, then the New Jerusalem will begin to be established. And after that happens, verse 27, yea, the work shall commence among all the dispersed of my people. Verse 28, yea, and then shall the work commence with the Father among all nations. And chapter 22. And then, when is the then, brothers and sisters? He's going right here in context and chronology. After New Jerusalem is established, then shall that which was written come to pass. Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud. Thou that didst not travail with child, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife. This is one of the beautiful passages where Isaiah is talking about what will happen in the millennial day. Who are the desolate children? Well, that's what's the marital covenant? It's Christ the bridegroom, and who's the bride? It's the church. And what happens when that covenant is not yielding children? Which is what's happening now. Most of the world is unaware of the covenant opportunity that they have with Christ. You had a comment.
At this time in the millennium, isn't the earth, all of the lands of the earth, haven't they all joined together?
Yes.
So the two cities might not be as far apart.
That's a good point. Yeah. We learn, and you can see this many places. The 133rd section is one of those that talk about after the second coming, this Pangea will occur, all right? Or coincident with the second coming. Now, look at this, these passages. Isaiah is saying, hey, look, brothers and sisters, enlarge the place of thy tent. Let them stretch forth the curtains of thy habitation. Spare not, lengthen thy cords and strengthen thy stakes. What's he saying? For thou, meaning the children of the covenant, shall break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles. Meaning the seed of that covenant relationship will now inherit the cities and towns and countries that right now are barren in terms of that covenant relationship with God. And they shall make desolate cities to become inhabited. Now, what I love about this, and then it talks about in verse 4 that thou shalt forget the shame of thy youth and forget your widowhood, that time when thy husband, who was the Lord, was not in that covenant relationship with you. That is going to go away. But brothers and sisters, when does that great gathering occur? That great gathering occurs in the millennial day. That's after the New Jerusalem has begun. And the Lord uses the word commence. After New Jerusalem shall the work of the Father commence. And so you say, well, wait, what are we doing now? Haven't we commenced anything? Well, yes, we have. We are the pre-commencement. We're like the orchestra that is like tuning their violins. All right, the overture. We're tuning up, but the symphony is not yet playing in its full majesty. Yes? Yeah, where's Adam-on-Diamond in this whole issue? Well, Adam-on-Diamond is right there. It's pre The meeting at Adam on the Almond is before the second coming of the Lord. But I think it's coincident with the New Jerusalem, at least the partial founding of that. And that'll happen before the Lord comes and reveals himself to everyone in his glory. All right?
The church has made great strides in having that property.
Yeah, the church has made strides in getting that property. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. So there are great things yet to happen. There are great things yet to happen. Now, I just want to lay that foundation. What I would say is that 99% of the gathering is millennial. And that ought to make sense to you. We're 0.2% of the earth's population as Latter-day Saints, 16.5 million people. But the great work of gathering really will commence and continue throughout the entire millennium. Brigham Young and others have said at the beginning of the millennium there are churches of all kinds. In fact, Brigham Young says Mohammedans, Islam. And that's just one reference, but what he means is there would be many. But by the end of the millennium, of course, you've all come to a unity of the faith. Well, let's pick up this story, and I'd like to read it with you in section 29 of the Doctrine and Covenants. All right. Section 29 deals with some of the signs of the times. We're not going to read that. We've done that. But it's helpful in laying out the phases of the earth's progression. And so let's begin here, speaking of the beginning of the millennium, in verse 9. So this is D&C 29, verse 9. For the hour is nigh, and the day soon at hand. Now this revelation was given in 1830. The hour is nigh, and the day soon at hand, when the earth is ripe, and all the proud, and they that do wickedly, shall be as stubble, and I will burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts. Notice the language, Lord of hosts. That's a military phraseology. He comes in glory. He comes with a destroying power. That wickedness shall not be upon the earth. For the hour is nigh, and that which was spoken by mine apostles must be fulfilled. He's speaking of Joseph Smith Matthew 24. Remember, we talked last week about the apostles, the Tuesday before Christ was crucified, having this discussion about what would happen prior to the Lord's coming. That's what this reference is to. For as they spoke, so shall it come to pass. For I, this is Christ speaking, will reveal myself from heaven with power and great glory, with all the hosts thereof, and dwell in righteousness with men on earth 1,000 years. So what do those passages teach us about this millennium and this second coming? Christ comes in glory. And does he come alone? Comes with a host. Who are those that come with him? Who are those that come with Christ? These are those who are resurrected. These are those who have received glorified bodies. You'll see this further as we read verse 12. And again, verily, verily, I say unto you, and it hath gone forth with a firm decree by the will of the Father, that mine apostles, the 12 which were with me in my ministry at Jerusalem, shall stand at my right hand at the day of my coming in a pillar of fire, being clothed with robes of righteousness. What's that, symbol of. The temple is a symbol of that. Let's get it right. The robes of righteousness that we wear are symbolic of the clothing and glory that happen in the resurrected state. All right? Clothed with robes of righteousness, robes of glory, with crowns upon their heads. Same thing. This is not symbolic of the temple. The temple is symbolic of this. With crowns upon their heads, in glory even as I am. All right? So those who come with glory, with robes, with crowns. What are crowns symbolic of? Royalty. These are kings and queens. All right? These would be those who are bound for celestial glory. And they come in their glory with the Lord, and he comes and is the center point of that arrival, but he comes with those on his, it says on his right hand. Of course, that is symbolic of being in a covenant relationship with him. And he comes with them. Included in that with them, of course, are the 12 apostles, but that's just proxy for all the righteous that will come with him. They'll come to judge, even as many as have loved me and kept my commandments, and none else. No one else comes. Verse 13. For a trump shall sound both loud and long, even as upon Mount Sinai, and all the earth shall quake, and they shall come forth. Yea, even the dead which died in me, to receive a crown of righteousness, and to be clothed upon, even as I am, to be with me, that we may be one. All right? So this second coming involves more than Christ alone. He comes with a whole host of the righteous. Now what you have here from verses 14 to 21 are the signs of the times. We're not going to do that. But what we will do is we'll go to verse 22. And again. Now we've said before that phrase is always hearkening back to something. There's a parallel principle involved. As things were before, so they will be again. And again, verily, verily, I say unto you that when the 1,000 years are ended, and men again begin to deny their God, then will I spare the earth but for a little season. And the end shall come, and the heaven and the earth shall be consumed and pass away, and there shall be a new heaven and a new earth. All right, so we've got to get this straight. What are we talking about? All right, first, the earth is created spiritually. Then it is clothed, after the architect design, in a temporal condition. And this is what we call Eden. And Eden is in a terrestrial state, right? Then there is this fall, and the earth falls to our current state. Earth, or a telestial state. Now, there have been those who assume, and I believe this, that the earth actually moved in space, and that there literally was a fall. And that change in location changed the laws that governed the existence of that sphere. And that when the earth comes back, it's literally moving locations back to a terrestrial governance, another part of the universe, if you will. Well, we know what happens here. We're in the middle of all of that. And after earth, what happens when the fire comes? That's fire, okay? Not very good illustration. That's fire. And then what happens? It goes back. So it's on the same plane as it was before. And this is the Millennium. This is Articles of Faith number 10 that says the earth will be renewed and receive its paradisiacal glory. All right. Well, what was life like here? Pretty good. Did you get weeds? No weeds. Did your tomatoes die? No. Did you get sick? Well, you guys didn't do anything because you weren't there, all right? But Adam and Eve were. And they were there some period of time. They didn't get old. They also couldn't procreate. Is that the same as over here? No, there are children born here. So it's not an exact similitude. It's not the exact same thing. But here in this place, in the millennium, what are the conditions of that place, brothers and sisters? What is life like in the millennium? We'll read some of this in the 101st section, but just from what we know, what is life like in that world? What are the conditions of that place? What's that? All right. The condition of men is that they are clean enough. I say clean enough, meaning that they are living to what standard? They're living to a terrestrial standard. All right? This is not yet where it will go, which is the celestial glory. All right? We're not yet there, but let's keep focusing on here. What else is life like in the millennium? Yes? All right. So you're going to live to the age of a tree. And then you will be, this is great. This word is in the scriptures, twinkled. All right. It actually says twinkling. But there will be a twinkling that occurs. We could read that real quick. Let's look at that. That's in section 63. All right. You just look at that. And you're going to come to verse 50 and 51. And he that liveth when the Lord shall come, and hath kept the faith, blessed is he, nevertheless it is appointed to him to die at the age of a man. Wherefore children shall grow up until they become old. Old men shall die, but they shall not sleep in the dust, but they shall be changed in the twinkling of an eye. So is there death in the millennium? Well, yes. Yes, they die, but they do not taste death. All right, and there's no graveyards. They're not buried. They go through a change that the Revelations call a twinkling, and they receive a new body. All right? And that is 100 years. Well, that's just really interesting. What else do we know? Yes, Bill. Yes. There will be peace. This is Isaiah speaking about beating the swords into plowshares and how there won't be contention among the nations or the people, even among the animal kingdom, right? We have all these great pictures of lions and lambs, right? And we have the Spirit of God like a fire is burning, speaking of lions and lambs. I could be wrong, but I never found lions and lambs in the scriptures. We have wolves and lambs. But the image is more powerful when you have the king of the jungle, and we've adopted that, yeah.
So, people will be improving?
Yeah, the question, if you can't hear it, is will people be improving in that terrestrial period? And the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. There will be conversion happening. The great work of that era will be temple work and missionary work. All right? And people will be repenting. Even though they'll be living to a higher standard, we'll still be getting better. And there will be a change in their condition as they progress and they more fully embrace the laws of the gospel. Yes?
How about the absence of Satan in the equality?
Thank you. Yeah, so no Satan. Satan will be bound. We often say that it's the righteousness of the people that bind him because he has no sway over them. That is true. However, there's more. The Lord binds him. His permissions are restricted. He doesn't have the free reign that he has here in the celestial kingdom. You'll remember in the temple, the devil says, "This is my kingdom." Well, that's referring to this world, not the next, you see. But we'll keep going on this before I get back to 29. Anything else we ought to say about the conditions of the millennial world?
What is 72 years?
What is 72?
Yeah, I thought that was the age of man.
Well, I think the age of a tree is what the Revelations say is 100 years. And that's when their twinkling happens.
Something about 70.
There is something about 72, and I don't know if that's millennial. Yes?
When the twinkling happens, if you are of a terrestrial being, how do you twinkle to a terrestrial body?
Let's talk about the types of bodies that are here in the millennium, okay? Who's going to be there, brothers and sisters? I want you to ponder this for a minute. Will you be there? Oh, well, let's think about that. Will you be there? Let's assume that you all are going to die in the next 30 years. All right? And let's assume that the second coming hasn't happened yet. Where are you going to be? You're going to be in the spirit world until you are resurrected. Now, when Christ comes the second time, the graves of the dead are opened up. And who are those that are resurrected? The righteous. And yes, I'm going to put you in that category. All right? So you and me, hopefully we keep our covenants, are going to be part of that group. And now you're resurrected. Now, do you live in the millennium? Do you live on the earth in this terrestrial sphere? I don't know. Yes, there is work to do. We know that mortals and immortals will be in the millennium together. Joseph Smith says that the resurrected beings will come from time to time. Bruce R. McConkie says they will come to assist in the work of the temple and to help correct the genealogical records. All right? Yes. Nina? Well, we're going to get to the end of the 1,000 years where we get some wickedness that pops up. Yes?
The spirit world is supposed to be on this earth.
Spirit world is on this earth, yep.
Okay,
So yes, the spirit world is still on the earth, but the conditions of the spirit world don't change. It's not as if the spirit world is refined and all of a sudden at a higher plane. It's the spirit world. Yes, Linda?
I have heard and read that in the millennium, people that have lost a child before the age of accountability, they'll be able to raise a child.
That's right, and Joseph did teach that. Joseph did teach that you'd have the opportunity to raise that child. Yes?
I figured that the millennium is 1,000-year bump because that will be how long it takes me to find a husband.
Okay, well, I want you just to ponder this. I'm not sure that I have a great answer. Let's read on page 5 of my notes. Joseph Fielding Smith. You go down to the second paragraph there at the bottom of the page. You see, because of destruction, you see that? Because of the destruction of the wicked at the Savior's second coming, only righteous people will live on the earth at the beginning of the millennium. Now, let's stop there. There are those who are living to a terrestrial standard, and they are alive at the second coming. They are proverbially caught up, meaning they are transfigured. Their bodies are able to withstand the consuming influence of the glory of God, just like Joseph Smith in the grove. Their bodies are changed sufficient to allow them to weather the storm when the earth is, burned, and the remnants thereon who are wicked are destroyed as stubble. Okay, there are people on the earth who will remain. This is who President Smith is speaking of. They will be those who have lived virtuous and honest lives. That does not mean that they were necessarily members of the church. By and large, most of those who remain will not be members of the church. All right? These people will inherit either a terrestrial or celestial kingdom, but that's yet future. During the millennium, mortals will still live on the earth, and they will continue to have children, as we do now. Now, he says here that mortals will have children. Now, what about you if you're in the spirit world? He's not talking about those from the spirit world. He's talking about the mortals. Joseph Smith said that the immortal beings will frequently visit the earth. These resurrected beings will help with the government and other work. Well, that's President Joseph Fielding Smith. I don't know that I have a really clear picture of this. Where do you go? If you are resurrected and come with Christ at his coming and the graves are opened up, where are you? Where is Adam going to be? Where's Noah going to be? Well, it's a fair question, but where's Adam now? He's resurrected. And is he on this earth that's going to be transfigured and terrestrial? I don't think so. But there's certain things that, if you just ask basic gospel questions like what's Adam doing right now, we got some question marks. At least I do. Where's the twinkling room? I don't know. But get in line. Get in line. Well, it's just something to think about. You guys go do your own research, come back and educate me. Because I've got questions about this. Now, let's get back to section 29. We were in verse 22 and 23. And we said that, and again, verily I say unto you, that when the 1,000 years are ended. So we just completely glossed over the millennium. All right? And we said that there was a 1,000-year period. This is the second coming here. And we're saying that when and here's 0 and 1,000 of the millennium, and we're here at the end of the millennium. And when the 1,000 years are ended, and men again begin to deny their God. So what happens at the end of the millennium, brothers and sisters? Satan is loosed, and he has influence. And all of a sudden, he stirs up contention, and he does exactly what he's doing now. Introduces philosophies of men and anti-truth, all right? And all of a sudden, we have a period of turmoil in the place of peace, all right? And so what happens? Well, we refer to another battle called what? Gog and Magog, which were the name of ancient Israeli kings or Palestinian kings. But there will be another battle. We didn't even do Armageddon in this class. But there will be another conflict. In fact, Gog and Magog refers to both Armageddon and this battle. But there will be this great conflict. And who is the king of the wicked? Well, it's the adversary. And who is the general of the righteous?
Lord of hosts.
Well, it is the Lord of hosts, but specifically we have Adam or Michael. It's Michael's role to finally displace the adversary, all right? He's the general. And so, let's go to verse 23. And the end shall come, the end of the millennium. And the heaven and the earth shall be consumed and pass away, and there shall be a new heaven and a new earth. So now we have a new heaven and a new earth twice. This earth is destroyed by fire, refined by fire, okay? purified by fire, and it becomes new in a millennial state. And after that 1,000-year period, Satan is loosed for a little while. And what happens again? Same thing. This world is glorified, again becoming cleansed and becoming new. And it is raised up to a new heaven and a new earth. And you would say a celestialized earth, right? So this is section 29, putting the bookends on this process. Now, verse 24 says, "And all old things shall pass away." The way things were done in the millennium shall pass away. This world shall pass away. "And all things shall become new, even the heaven and the earth and the fullness thereof, both men, beast, fowl, fish. Not one hair, neither mote shall be lost." All right? Well, that's section 9, or 29 rather, that puts the framing of these events. Let's go on now to well, I think we did. Are there any questions about this one, brothers and sisters? Yes.
And those that are fit for the celestial earth, where are they going to go?
Yeah. They've got to go somewhere else. They've got to go to a terrestrial kingdom. And so one of the things we could do now is we could talk about the order of the resurrection. All right? The order of the resurrection is overlain with this chronology. And if you really want to study this, you go to section 88. And 88 talks about all the trumpets blowing. All right? The 7 trumpets, and they each are a call to some great event, most of them a resurrection event. And who's blowing the trumpet? Well, it is the angels, but ultimately, it's Michael, the archangel. All right? Joseph Fielding Smith teaches that is indicative of his possessing the keys, the priesthood keys of resurrection. The trump being a symbol for those keys. Obviously, those keys are subject to Christ, who holds those keys, and the Father. But when we talk about the resurrection, who remains in in millennium? Well, let's go into the spirit world. We've already said that when Christ comes again, it's the righteous who are resurrected first. And we would call that the morning of the first resurrection. Now, the first resurrection is a type more than a specific time, because there has already been a first resurrection. Adam, Enoch, Noah, Mormon and Moroni come to the prophet Joseph Smith in their bodies. They have been resurrected, and those ones died after Christ. All right? They were resurrected in the first resurrection. Now, those righteous in the spirit world will be resurrected with Christ at his coming, and there will be those who are left behind. And I assume there will be some righteous who are left behind, just like when Christ was resurrected and he went into the spirit world, he left several of the righteous so that they could stay and do what? They went into prison and taught the gospel. Yeah, these were righteous people that stayed. Then, later on, there will be more resurrection at times and seasons throughout the first resurrection of people who are resurrected to a celestial glory. Then you come to the afternoon, what we call the afternoon of the first resurrection. And who is that for? That's for those who are terrestrial. So the morning of the first resurrection, and the first resurrection is a type of resurrection. The first resurrection is for those who will be celestial. And in the afternoon, in the, we'll call it the PM, all right, of the first resurrection, who's that for? That's for those who will receive a terrestrial glory. Now again, I come back and say, you ask the question, where will they go? I don't have a good answer to that. Are they going into the millennial state until it, there's going to be another place, unless you get into all this multidimensional stuff, which I don't understand, and I'm not going to go there. All right, and then what about those who remain? This would be those who are living to a telestial law. They're dead, they're in the spirit world. And do they get to come to the millennium? They missed that party. All right? The second resurrection happens at the end of the spirit world. And when they're resurrected with a body to a telestial glory. And clearly, they are not going to the millennium because that is a terrestrial place. Okay? So we overlay this sequence of resurrection vis-a-vis this millennium, and I think we have questions, but we can understand a little bit of the puzzle. Yeah?
I just wonder, then, there's the partial judgment, when is the final?
What happens first, resurrection or judgment?
It is the same.
Yeah, good answers, all. You're resurrected first before the final judgment, but it's not going to be any surprise. You can look at your body and go, hey, pretty sure I'm going to do okay on this exam. All right? You're going to see the glory. You're going to understand your type of resurrection. And then we talk about intermediate judgments, and that happens all the time. It's happening now. Every time you sit before a common judge. Okay? That intermediate judgment happens all the way through until, says Nephi, the great judge himself, who employeth no servant there, meets you at the judgment bar. Okay? So, yeah, judgment's ongoing. Yes?
Can you describe a terrestrial phrase?
Yeah, we can. The way we do that is we look at section 7. The question was, can you describe terrestrial state and traits? Let's do that by looking at section 76. I don't suppose this is comprehensive, but I think it's the best that we have. And you look here, verses 74, 5, 6, 7, all right? These are those who, verse 75, are honorable men, okay? Honorable. But who are blinded by the craftiness of men. Verse 79, these are they who are not valiant in the testimony of Jesus. That begs the question, what does it mean to be valiant in the testimony of Jesus? I think that means consecrating, sacrificing, dedicated, engaged in the work, engaged in the gathering, complete, all in, as we say. Now, you can be a good and an honorable person who is not all in. And I think that describes that host of terrestrial, adherents. But we typically say the good and noble and honorable people of the earth. But they may not be valiant in the testimony of Jesus. I remember my grandfather giving a talk where he talked about what it meant to be valiant in the testimony of Jesus. And he went through and he said they keep the word of wisdom, they pay their tithing, they go to the temple, they engage in the work, they accept callings, they receive the servants of the Lord, and they accept callings, and they're valiant. There would be a whole host of people who may be good, but are they valiant? And I think that's the question that you may ask. Yeah.
So if a partner keeps that celestial state of those traits, and their spouse does not,
Yeah, the question is what happens when you've got one partner who's valiant and the other one's not? Ultimately, no one receives the inheritance of the celestial kingdom without being willing to abide that law, to follow the law. That's section 88 that says there's a law to every kingdom, and you've got to be willing to live the law of that kingdom, or you cannot possess that kingdom. In fact, that same passage says that effectively you will receive, quote, that which they are willing to receive. Well, what are you willing to receive? What you're willing to receive is a function of what you're willing to sacrifice to receive or to live that certain law. So what happens? Well, you've got to, whoever's not living that law has got to live that law. Whoever's not living a celestial law has got to choose to live that celestial law prior to being allowed to have admittance into that kingdom.
So if they do not, then he goes single.
Well, yes. Well, no, I think that there is no blessing withheld from those that keep their covenants, including righteous parentage, family connection, and spouse. There is no blessing withheld from those who desire it and who keep their covenant. That's the law of compensation. I believe in that law. All right. Let's see. Let's read a few of these statements instead of going to 101, because I think we've done some of the conditions. I just think some of this is interesting. Here's one on the bottom of page 2. Sometimes you hear the comment, hey, if we were just a little bit more righteous, we might hasten the day. Let's bring the second coming faster. Well, this is Elder McConkie who says, the second time for the second coming of Christ is as fixed and certain as was the hour of his birth. It will not vary as much as a single second from the divine decree. He will come at the appointed time. The millennium will not be ushered in prematurely because men turn to righteousness, nor will it be delayed because iniquity abounds. I think that's an interesting thought that at least you ought to hear. Let's see. We read about 2 world capitals. Let's read about, on page 4, being caught up. You Latter-day Saints believe that good old Protestant doctrine of being raptured? We don't use that word, but we do. Middle of the page there. When Christ comes, the saints who are on earth will be quickened and caught up to meet him. This does not mean that those who are living in mortality at the time will be changed to pass through the resurrection. You're not resurrected. For mortals must remain on earth until after the 1,000 years are ended. A change, nevertheless, will come over all who remain on the earth. They will be quickened so that they are not subject to death until they are old. Men shall die when they are 100 years of age and shall be made suddenly to the immortal state. Graves will not be made during the 1,000 years, and Satan will have no power to tempt any man. Children shall grow up as calves to the stall. What does that mean, brothers and sisters? That's an Isaiah passage. What does it mean that the children will be raised up as calves to the stall? That was to say that they are led right into where they need to go. They don't wander. They're not off in the wilderness. They're raised up, and once they're in their stall, there are boundaries around them. They are protected. They're raised up as calves there's no wolf that comes and eats the lamb or the calf, all right? They're raised up as calves to the stall. Where was I? Yeah, there we are. That is, without sin or without temptations, which are so prevalent today, okay? So what he's saying is that when the Lord comes, those who are remaining on the earth and who are worthy of a terrestrial, or who are terrestrial in nature, at least living those good and honorable men of the world, now are they literally caught up into the heaven? I don't know. I think caught up is used in other places to mean quickened, which is simply a change in the body, all right? And we don't have perfect language here. But if you wanted a pretty close parallel, you would look at 3 Nephi 28, which deals with the transfiguration. Your body is, remember this is the 3 Nephites, it's John, the revelator. This is a changing of your body that allows you to continue without tasting of death to perform some mission. And you're going to marry that concept with the transfiguration that happens to Joseph Smith in the grove and Moses on the mount, where they stand before the glorified Lord and their body is not consumed. There's a change in their body. And those on the earth, at the second coming who will not be consumed will have that change occur to their body. Yes?
We have the old Jerusalem and the new Jerusalem, and the new Jerusalem is in Jerusalem. And who runs that place?
Yeah, who runs that place? The New Jerusalem. Yeah, the New Jerusalem is in Jackson County. The old Jerusalem is in the old city.
Yeah, that's what I meant, the old.
Yeah. We have well, let me put it this way. We have prophecies about building a temple in Jerusalem. Who builds the temple? Temple builders. Good answer. Good answer. And how do you build temples? You gotta have keys. You gotta have keys. This isn't going to be a Gentile nation, speaking in terms of having or not having the gospel, going to erect some temple. It's going to be the Latter-day Saints. And it will be governed from the chair of Russell M. Nelson and his successors. All right? That's who's going to build the temple in Jerusalem. And that's who's going to build the temple in the New Jerusalem. And then those two edifices will be the center places of the two world capitals that will govern the world. And the word of the Lord shall go forth from Jerusalem, and the law from Zion. I think I switched those. But those two things will happen. All right? Yeah.
Just to make it clear, if you have a good man who's living a terrestrial life and Satan's bound, what is stopping him from progressing to be valiant towards the Savior if there's not any temptation to prevent him from doing that?
It's a great question. Why wouldn't a valiant man just go all in? Or a terrestrial man who's good and noble, why wouldn't he go all in? I don't know the answer to that. But I think there will be people, the one thing the Lord never restricts is agency. And I think people have the ability to choose. Honestly, sometimes it just requires a lot. It's a lot to be a member of this church. It requires a great deal. In fact, it requires a great deal to be a God. You have to be willing to give everything away. You have to be willing to sacrifice through creation and for all of your children. I'm not so sure that even the good and noble people of the earth, that everyone's going to want to make that decision. That they're willing to consecrate and give everything away. It doesn't mean you're bad. It means, well, you haven't lived to the law of that celestial glory. So, yes, Rudy.
Well, that's true. In Jerusalem, they want to build a temple now. What happened then?
They do. Rudy says the Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem want to build the temple. And I've been to the Temple Mount many times. You can, from the western side of the Wailing Wall, across that plaza, you can see a large golden menorah. And it's encased in this like bulletproof plexiglass. And that is the menorah that the Jews want to place in the temple. They're looking forward to the day when the temple is there. What they don't fully appreciate is that it's the key holders that will establish that place. But by then, the enmity between Judah and Ephraim will cease. The first and the last will switch, right? And the Jews will, when the Lord comes and places his mount on the foot of olives, the Jews will begin to say, oh. And they will turn towards the Lord and his kingdom. And they'll be involved in administering ordinances in Jerusalem, but not until they've joined the church. All right? Yes?
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying that the temple that's going to be built in Jerusalem will be built by those who hold the keys, which would be us.
Yeah.
Then you're also saying that the water that's supposed to come out of the temple that will heal the Dead Sea will come
Well, yes, in that specific case, you have to ask yourself, what is that literal or figurative? It's more importantly figurative. When you read that passage in Ezekiel, you see that the waters that come out from under the temple, that yes, they go to heal the Dead Sea, and I suppose there will be a healing of the Dead Sea. I think that is literal. But more importantly, it's the living water of covenants that go out from those who enter the temple. And what happens in that revelation is it talks about the green shoots that pop up on the banks of the river that flows out from the temple. What is that? That's life that comes because of covenant relationship with God. So you have to ask yourself in that passage, are we talking literal or figurative? And then you take it, you take both of those and examine that question. Yes?
In your notes up there, you talk about the celestial kingdom, the new heaven and new earth. Is that suggesting that we will, as the earth, be separated from our current course around the sun and go somewhere else?
I don't know. The question is, when there's a new heaven, new earth, does that mean we're going to go someplace else? We're not going to go around the sun? I don't know. Possibly. This place will be an orb of tremendous light and glory. Some have suggested that the prophecies about the stars hurling through the sky is not because the stars are moving, because we are moving, right? If you really believe that we fell from Eden and there was a literal change, then you could suppose returning to our paradisiac glory would be a movement in space. I don't know, sort of repeating some of the philosophies out there, but I think it's interesting to think about.
Well, but this whole process is known by God, which we can't explain now. Isn't that the gist of it?
Yeah, the whole process is, this whole thing is known by God, and we can't exactly explain it. You've summarized beautifully what has happened today. We do the best we can with what revelations we have. Here's a principle I think that's important. The stage of existence which the Lord is most keen to reveal details about is the stage that you're currently in. All right? Does that make sense? Lord's going to tell you everything you need to know about how to navigate life in this world. But what Adam and Enoch are doing today, not for you to know right now, apparently, because it hasn't been revealed. And so there is, and frankly, we have a beautiful revelation on, we've got to end, but on section 138 about the spirit world from Joseph F. Smith, where he saw. But there are very fundamental and basic questions about the spirit world that you and I can't answer. It hasn't been revealed yet. And so Dallin Oaks gives a talk in conference and he says, trust in the Lord. Well, that's just a principle. We do what we can with what the Lord's given us, and we piece these things together from the revelations. But we have lots of wonderful questions. Well, brothers and sisters, we have been in the last days. And we've been with the philosophies of men, and we've talked about what truth is, and we've talked about what happens with wayward children, and can they repent and return, and we've explored some of these concepts together because we live in the last days. Aren't we grateful? Aren't we grateful that in the day that we live, we have the fullness of the everlasting gospel? Aren't we grateful that the gospel has been restored in word and in power, as Paul said? Doctrine, understanding, scriptural language, terms and concepts which form our worldview. And then importantly, we have power. We have angels who have come, and we have prophets who have turned the door of temple work and covenant making and baptism. And that authority binds us to God and protects us from the adversary. Aren't we grateful? Aren't we grateful we live in that day, in these marvelous, marvelous latter days? I, for one, am. I'm grateful for all the Lord has revealed, and I anticipate a great deal that will yet be revealed so the great Jehovah can finish his work. And I thank you for being here these 7 weeks. We'll do something again in the spring, but sure appreciate your faithfulness and your faith. It buoys me. I'll leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.